All right. So, yeah, Salem's Lot. This is the 2024 remake of the 1975 novel. I actually have the novel. It was gifted to me by my bestie. Haven't read the thing yet. Been too damn busy. I've got just a massive pile of books and a lot of Stephen King books. Is like, I'll get to those when, you know, I'm not either, bleeding from my work or from Mark.
Hello, Mr. Kettner. I don't exactly know what you mean by "dear God, ma'am," but we're glad you're here.
Okay, so again, this is the latest remake, latest adaptation, I should
Yeah.
say, of this
Yeah,
book.
we're on number 3 now, right? Because we got the '70s one, we got the Rob Lowe one in like the early 2000s, and then this one,
Yes,
right?
we had two miniseries in 1979, 2004. The 1979 miniseries is the one that a lot of people relate to and talk about when they talk about Salem's Lot, especially the image of the little vampire boy outside the glass window hovering. That is one of
Somewhat,
those.
somewhat famously upstaged by The Simpsons doing it in their vampire episode of the Treehouse of Horror, but that's where they draw that one from.
Okay, quick hot take. Again, as the kid of the group, I have never watched one single minute nor full episode of Treehouse of Horror.
Okay, just cut him
Just
off. We
leave.
don't need.
You child! My God. I'm actually waiting to see if he brings himself back because I know he's got control, so I'm just waiting to find out.
He'll be back
Okay.
in a second or two.
All right. So yes, that is the image. So this is the first adaptation that is a singular movie, not a mini series. Screw it, I'll bring him back. I can't
It's
stay
your
mad at you.
it's your show. I wasn't going to supersede you.
That's never stopped you before.
Yeah, I'm growing.
This is what we call character development, which is more than can be said for a lot of Salem's Lot.
Hang on a second.
That's fair.
No, yeah. This being the third remake, it's and again, I'll get to this, but again, I'm really interested to hear what you think about this movie, Robert. Is that it's? I think I'll start with this, and I think this will give Alexis a good jumping off point too. I feel like every generation has the rights, even before and after us, to do their own versions of Stephen King stories that inspired them. That's why we're up to 3 versions of Salem's Lot, at least two versions of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it begs a lot of questions. So again, Alexis, back to you. You paused, so I was gonna keep that dead air
Well,
moving.
Well, again, I was mistaken when I said this is a remake because it is an adaptation. This is
Yeah.
not a remake of the miniseries. This is a new adaptation of the book. And that's perfectly fine. Filmmakers are welcome to do new adaptations of source material if the creative strike hits them. We've seen some really good versions of that, and we unfortunately do get a lot of incels on Twitter go, "You can't remake that. That's a class." It's like it's not a remake. They're not remaking the first film, especially since, again, this is the first one that isn't a mini series. And I'll just go ahead and say it probably should have been.
Yeah, there's the biggest problem that this movie runs into, I think, is well, you've got the book right there. Salem's Lot is not a thin novel.
It's not The Stand, thank God. I mean, that's a book that
or where it's like
Yeah,
you can stick one of those books in your coat pocket, and if you're ever going to get shot, the bullet will or the book will take the bullet. You'll be fine.
Oh, I prefer to give that book to the toddler so they could stand on it and reach the sink to wash their hands.
Thank you, Doug Walker.
Yeah, when I first read The Stand, I actually did read the unabridged version, and carrying that around.
That's responsible for your scoliosis, is it not?
Well, I was in that junior high, I think. Yeah, it would have been junior high. I occasionally, if someone just kind of walked by me reading it, they'd go, "Wait, what is that? A phone book?" Because the unabridged version of The Stand is, again, it's pretty thick. But part of the issue with trying to cut Salem's Lot down into a movie, and this one only ran it's not a long film. It's
113 minutes.
yeah, so we're barely over the 90-minute mark, all things considered. Um, what makes Salem's Lot as a novel, and this is what at a minimum, the original miniseries really nail, and I'll talk about the Rob Lowe one in a second, but the original one really nails the town aspect. This is about something that happens to a location, not just one or two characters.
Absolutely.
And it plays into one of Stephen King's profound gifts as a writer, which is, of course, character work and setting. He's one of the best at creating a world that feels very much like the world you're in, not just like transporting you to a different world, but his sense of verisimilitude is really, really strong. And I've heard him talk about this once or twice. Because he says, there's a thing they teach you when you're in college and you're writing that specificity is the enemy of the reader, right? Like there's something wrong about being specific, that being vague and a bit more purple with your prose is somehow more elevated, more literary. And what he arrived at was, no, somebody looks in their cabinet, you want to bring them into the world, they don't find pills, they find aspirin. They're not driving a truck, they're driving a Chevy. And that brings you into the world. And then you also have to find the right way to make up things that sound real but aren't. I think the one he mentioned was one of his favorite things to cite is the IAA, the Insurance Adjusters of America. So anytime he has to create a stat, he will use that as the thing that he cites, because it's not a real organization. But it sounds plausible enough. If I told you that existed, you'd probably just believe me, because it sounds like a thing that should. So and that's one of the things that works so well for Salem's Lot as a novel, is he sucks you into this little area, and we get to watch a lot of different elements as the degradation and curse of Barlow is spreading. And that's one of the major losses in this film, is it's so short that we just plow pell-mell through anything approximating the story. And honestly, if you haven't seen either of the two previous versions or read the book, watching this is a very different experience, because it feels very disjointed. It feels like there's big chunks missing. And if you are familiar with the source material or other adaptations, this feels like a greatest hits. Because, okay, so the kid dies, and then we get the kid outside the window, because that's classic. And we get the cross lighting up. Again, classic moment. And Barlow's confrontation with Father Callahan. But all the little moments that build to make those things really resonate are absent, and it's to the detriment of the overall film.
Absolutely.
Plus, as a fan of The Dark Tower, watching Father Callahan get shortchanged really rubbed me the wrong way.
It is. I do want to point out this was directed by, written and directed by Gary Dauberman, who wrote Annabelle Creation, and The Nun, Annabelle Comes Home, and both It movies. So this guy knows good horror. I
don't know if there was again a budgetary constraint, or if he has a more of a writing partner in the other ones that helps him out. Or if being the writer and director for this one was just a bridge too far for him.
This felt like it was put on a bullet train.
Yeah.
It felt like it was like, we need to get to the end as quick as possible. And again, having seen the old 70s one, and again, I agree with you, Robert. It's like, that 70s one is all about character development, and, you get to kind of learn about people and start caring about them. Like, even when Ben's old teacher has that heart attack,
yeah,
near the middle of it, when he's facing the vampire, you're like, oh no, not him. We like him.
We do.
And even Bedelia, I never remember the actress name. She was John McClane's wife in Die Hard.
Yeah.
Her dad gets impaled by, James Mason. I'm going to impale you on horns. I am at this time. Yes. You feel bad for him too. This movie, I didn't really attach with any of the characters or care. Like, again,
yeah,
it's kind of cheating, I feel, in a way, because like I already know like obviously the old original, the OG one, and I've seen the Rob Lowe one with Donald Sutherland. So it's like I kind of already know what's going to happen, but I still want that connection with these characters now played by new actors that I just didn't feel I got this time.
No, it's the biggest problem with this movie is that the only way horror really works, is when you care about the people it's happening to. Because if you don't have that, all you have are, lest this come across like I'm completely dumping on the movie, there are some really strong visual elements to this thing.
Oh, yeah.
This movie does have some really good scares. I mean, for how short it is. Oh my God, what is the foreign guy's name who serves Barlow? What is his name? Richard Straker.
Straker,
yeah. When James Mason's character from the original.
Yeah, we have the shot of him taking in that silhouette of him grabbing the little boy in the woods. We have the point of view of this kid in the bag. You can hear him just breathing so heavily. He's panicking. He's terrified. The one shot of I can't even remember. This is the problem. I remember the visuals.
Yeah.
If you ask me which characters this stuff happened to, I couldn't tell you. I remember one character getting grabbed by like their jaw, pulled up in the air, and that was a terrifying scene. Now, which character was it? I got nothing.
Couldn't tell you if I had a gun to my head. That seems to be the issue with like when we remake horror movies these days, is that we'll upgrade the visuals, we'll upgrade the scares, and then we completely lose what it was that is the story that drives all this.
Yeah.
And this movie's harmless. Because I know we got 3 movies to get through. Obviously this one included. This movie's harmless. If you're a fan of the first 2, and then Robert, I'm gonna throw it back to you. Sorry, throw it back to you because you said you were gonna talk about the Rob Lowe one. But again, if you're a fan of the first 2, go ahead and watch it. It's not going to like deeply insult your love of the story or and such. But it's not something that you need to run out and go, oh man, I've loved Salem's Lot since I had it carried around, in junior high, and like, man, they did a new version. It's not anything that you need to fire a starting gun and run to get yourself to. But again, overall, it's harmless.
Yeah, the Rob Lowe one, just very briefly, ridiculously good cast, and that's kind of what carries that one. You have Rob Lowe, you have Donald Sutherland, you have Rutger Hauer. Like, you've got some really heavy hitters that came to the fore in that one. And those performances largely make that work. Unfortunately, it's badly paced. There's no 2 ways around the Rob Lowe one. It wasn't paced out properly, and on a miniseries, that's death. Like that just kills the ability to continue watching it.
Right, and like same problem with this one. Like even the first one, the original OG 70s one, is a little slow. But again, as we talked about, that's all about building character. We want you to care about these people, see the curse of Barlow that's being spread. Again, I remember the first time I watched it, I had already seen North by Northwest and the Disney's old ass 28,000 Leagues Under the Sea movie, so I knew who James Mason was. I just assumed day one, or like not day one, but like minute 1, oh, James Mason, he's the villain. So then when Barlow actually shows up and he's all Nosferatu up in this shit, I was like, oh, crap. Second back. Oh, you're Renfield? Damn, you're scarier than our Dracula in this case. Well done, James Mason. Well, I thank you. I was trying to be more frightening. I was. But that's just from Mark because he loves that impression that I do. But yeah, with the pacing and everything, it seems like the first one suffered from it because 70s. That was TV pacing. You need to stretch everything out. The 2000s one, I'm going to give a pass simply because, like, it felt like they were trying to like bow to the original.
Little too much.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I understand why they were bowing to us, like, this got us off the ground. This one seemed like fuck pacing, get to the end. And I understand it's also sorry, I'm kind of jumping train tracks here. It is my generation that's like, I want everything now, which is fair in certain cases. But like with a story like Salem's Lot, that is a slow burn. Much like a lot of King's really great ones, like Dolores Claiborne, The Shining, such like that, are supposed to be slow burns. It's like, let it burn slowly. I mean, everybody gave It Chapter 2 shit for being way too long, which I agree with the choices they made. But had they made slightly different choices, I wouldn't have hated it if it was as long as It Chapter 2 was, if they'd made those choices. And I felt like they had the option to do this, especially with a streaming movie.
Yeah.
I think when we reviewed It Chapter 2, we mostly just gave it shit for some of the worst CGI we had seen in ages.
Just call me Angel of the Morning.
Yeah, some of the CGI is a bit wonky in that one, and yeah, it is too long. That thing's almost 3 hours.
You're in frame.
Okay, yeah, I just love Shay just like appeared out of the freaking brick wall like the Homer meme.
It's like I have ghosts.
But yeah, to close on Salem's Lot again, I want to give a couple of other examples of some really strong visual elements because those are plenty in this.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way Barlow's made up. This is probably the best
Yeah.
looking Barlow of the three. He doesn't look like they're desperately trying to cut around the makeup to hide some of the effects. So it's just they're able to let him sit in frame on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of really nice tension building moments that sadly get stepped on because they get paid off way too quickly. I mean, the obvious one is the time when they pull up, they're driving, they pull up, and before anyone can get out of the car, one of them stops and says, well, don't get out. There's vampires on the roofs. And everyone kind of slowly looks out, and you can just see the shining eyes on
Which
the
is
rooftops.
a cool shot.
It is, and it's a royal shame that nothing more is done with the tension that kind of a thing can build.
Yeah, it's like that's one of those, you have someone talking over the shoulder shots of each, and you have one of them start eyes getting bigger and kind of leaning back, and the person that's talking to them who has their back to the situation is like, what? And they just do that.
Yeah.
And then you pan, it's like, oh crap, we're surrounded. Now would be a good time to run.
Yeah, that the other, and as mentioned, like this is one of the higher body count stories that King puts together because believe it or not, he doesn't have a lot of like really high volume death. I mean, minorly accepting The Stand where the world ends,
or
Maximum Overdrive,
or the original ending of It, where Derry was basically just consumed by the earth.
Yeah, but he tends to let the horror build on a much smaller, more intimate scale. Instead of, again, and I mean, even The Stand, part of the point is that the world ends in the beginning, and then it's what do we do afterwards? This one, because it has a higher body count, it winds up feeling, if you don't care about the characters, it just doesn't work because you get kind of numb to it, even with inventive kills. I mean, this is the curse of the slasher genre at some point, right? You just watch it for the inventive kills and you don't care about anything.
That was us doing the Friday the 13th marathon. It was like, we don't care about any of these characters. We just want to see them die.
Yeah, and this one runs real close to that line in a really less than a desirable way. I appreciated the finale, actually. I thought making it the drive-in instead of, I think the novel, it's been a while since I've read it. They just have the showdown in the Barlow house for that one for them. And, well, not the Barlow house. It's where Barlow is, but starts with an M, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, the climax is really good. And I love the genius idea of the sun setting behind the screen and the kid realizing if he takes out the screen, the vampires lose their edge. Again, very, very inventive.
Yeah, so that's a really strong idea. It's it's visualized very well. It's just it falls short because you don't really care about any of the people that it's happening to.
And this is the first time I'm going to say this in this. I'm probably going to say it a few more times. Is that the ideas that were brought into this would work perfectly and be legendary if it hadn't been a Salem's Lot redo.
Probably.
If it had been an original thing that still had vampires, the director, I love Salem's Lot, so I'm going to do my own vampire thing. I was so inspired by that book and the movies that I saw, blah, blah, and this is how I'm going to do it. It would have been legendary, but since it's attached to something that we kind of already know, you're bringing in new members of the audience, my generation and stuff like that have not seen the originals, and that's great. But again, for the rest of the people, obviously the two people above me who've already seen both, it's like, okay, well, that part was new and cool, but, anytime you do something, you redo something, you have to bring something new and exciting to it that throws off, the people who have already seen it 1,000 times. As an example, the Hannibal TV show through, use the books as a pathway. But then for the fans, are like, I know exactly what's going to happen. Will Graham's going to walk in there. He's going to figure out it's Hannibal. He's going to arrest him. And then we're off to the races for Red Dragon. What do you mean he just stabbed Will? What do you mean Hannibal got away? No, you can't do that. Because the book ends like, what are you doing to me? It's like, season 3 coming. It's like, you fuckers. And that worked because it threw off the audience members that knew the original source material. And in this case, source material not only being the book, but the movies, excuse me. And this one just didn't. It brought cool scares and visuals, but didn't add anything new and any new spice to the story that we already know.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is that if you are interested and you want to see another adaptation, the 1979 miniseries is also available on Max. It's a 3-hour, 3-minute little miniseries, but you can go check that out if you don't have time to read the book.
Do read the book though. It's been a while since I've seen the original miniseries. But one of my favorite horror segments from the book, I don't think made it into either adaptation, and it's pretty harrowing actually. It's the school bus driver when he gets attacked by all the kids.
Oh yeah,
it's such a wonderfully realized sequence that just I understand why from an editorial standpoint or an adaptation standpoint. If you're cutting stuff, it's an easy thing to exclude, but man, do I hate that they do it.
The first time that they did it in the 70s, they couldn't do it because of budgetary constraints.
Yeah.
The second time they did it, I believe Columbine had just happened or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the producers and censors, I actually read this in research for this podcast, had been like, dude, you're right. It's a terrifying scene, but
X-nay on the killer 8-year-old swarming the bus driver.
Yeah, read the room. Know what the country is going to react to.
Dude, show me a girl topless. I can dance with that. But you have kids killing a bus driver.